Okay, I'm going to talk about some shortcuts to compare fractions and also for how to put fractions in order from least to greatest. The best way to really understand it would be to model these with fraction strips to really get a feel for what the fractions are. When you get better at that, you could even visualize them and be able to tell. But some of the most basic shortcuts you could use if you were to compare 5/6 and 3/4 and trying to find out which one is bigger. The most basic way is to just find cross products. That means to multiply diagonally. You see here that I'm going to use a real small line, narrow line there. If you multiply it diagonally, 6 times 3 going diagonally is 18. 4 times 5 is 20. Now 20 is greater than 18. Therefore, 5/6 is greater than 3/4. Now there's another way to do it that's really quick and easy, but there's another way to do it, and that is just to make them decimals. By watching my other videos, you see that you'll find out that I always like to apply math to decimals and money in particular. Now I have a video on converting fractions to decimals where you could see exactly how, but I'll just give you a quick tutorial right now. To convert 5/6 into a decimal, it's 5 divided by 6, or 5.0 divided by 6. You can also do 5 divided by 6 on your calculator, and it's going to give you 0.83 with a repeating 3. You want to think about that as money. It's basically like 83 cents. 3/4 is 3/4, or 3 divided by 4. Your calculator is going to say 0.75 or 75 cents. Now here with that example, you see that 83 cents is greater than 75 cents. Both ways you get the same answer. I'll do one more example with only comparing two fractions, and then we'll talk about what do we do if we have to put fractions in order from least to greatest. So here's another simple example. Say we're comparing 1/3 to 4/6. I'll use that real narrow pen again and draw a little diagonal line. And if we're going to do cross products, 3 times 4 is 12. 6 times 1 is 6. Now you can see that 12 is greater than 6, so 4/6 is greater than 1/3. A little thicker there. 4/6 is greater than 1/3. Or we could convert them to decimals. 1/3 is just 1 divided by 3, which will be a repeating 3, which we would round to our hundredths place. I always like to round decimals to the hundredth because that's the most practical decimal place to use since it has to do with money. So 1/3 is like 33 cents. 4/6 is a repeating 6, which would be 0.666666. We would round that to 0.67, so it's like 67 cents. 67 cents, more than 33 cents, so we get the exact same answer. So that's an easy way to compare fractions. Now, the cross products work really well if you're only trying to see if one fraction is bigger than another. But where that isn't going to help you as much is if you have to compare multiple fractions. For example, say I want to compare the following fractions. I'll list out 4 fractions here. Say I want to compare 2/3, 1/5, 1/4, and 3/10. And I want to put them in order from least to greatest. Well, I would have to basically compare 2 at a time and use process of elimination, but I think it would be a lot easier when you're comparing more than 2 fractions, or you have to put them in order from smallest to biggest, to just make them all into decimals. So you can do it the long way. You could do 2 divided by 3, or you could pick up your calculator and do 2 divided by 3. It's like 67 cents. 1 divided by 5 is 0.2. But I would add a placeholding 0 and call it 20 cents. 1 divided by 4 is 0.25 or a quarter, and 3 divided by 10 is 3/10, 0.3. Add a place holding 0 to make it money, 30 cents. Notice I make sure everything looks like money. Now it's really easy to put them in order from least to greatest. So what's the smallest amount of money? Is our 20 cents, or 1/5. So 1/5 is the smallest fraction. What's the second smallest amount of money? 25 cents, or 1/4. Next biggest is 30 cents, which is 3/10. And then the biggest is 2/3, or 67 cents. So that was nice and easy. Let's do one more example. Say we want to, or we need to put in order 3/4, 5/12, 1/3, and 1/8. You could, off on a scrap piece of paper, you could compare two fractions at a time until you narrow it down to what's your smallest, or you could just convert them to decimals, which is the quick and painless method, I call it. 3/4 is 3/4, or 75 cents. This time maybe I'll give the dollar signs. 5/12 would round to 42 cents. 1/3, 1 divided by 3 on my calculator, 33 cents. And 1/8 is 0.125, but I would round that to 13 cents. Okay? Now let's put them in order from smallest to biggest. So what's the smallest fraction? 13 cents is the smallest amount of money. So 1/8 is the smallest fraction. Okay, 33 cents is the next smallest. 1/3 is a little bit bigger. Then we have the next bigger fraction is 5/12. And then lastly, the largest fraction is 3/4, right there. Okay? You do not compare fractions just by looking at the denominator. Some common mistakes kids make. Sometimes kids will look at 1/8 compared to 1/2, and they say, well, 8's bigger than 2, so that must be the bigger fraction. Not according if you would make them into decimals or draw a picture. So this will be the last example just to prove that. Okay, with unit fractions, or when 1 is the numerator, the smaller the denominator, actually the bigger slice of the pie. Okay, 1/2 is 50 cents and 1/8 is 13 cents. That proves it there. But if we were to draw pictures, there's a half. There's 1/8. Well, I'd rather have half of a pizza if I'm really hungry than only 1/8 of the same size pizza. So that proves it there also. Look at that. The one with the with the smaller denominator is actually the bigger fraction. So you always have to make sure by either using cross products or converting the fractions to decimals.